last decade, ride-sharing apps have soared in popularity. Hundreds of millions of people using Uber and Lyft every year, entering a car with a stranger in order to get to their destination.
We knew this morning a major settlement with Uber and Lyft. The New York Attorney General says they've agreed to pay more than $300 million for wage theft.
Along with horrific attacks, even murder.
Arizona police are trying to figure out why a man stabbed and killed a pregnant Lyft driver.
You may have seen the latest upsetting video of yet another Asian American being attacked. Over the weekend, an Asian Uber driver was coughed on by a woman who even ripped off his mask.
It was all-out war in an Uber over a mask. 3 women are hassling the driver because he says one of them refused to wear a mask. Watch as she does the unthinkable, coughing on the driver. Then the irate woman grabs his phone and rips off his mask.
You don't touch my property!
All I did was take his mask off and cough a little bit, but I ain't even have corona. He lucky as hell I ain't have nothing on me.
Revealing 3,824 reports of sexual assault and misconduct. Nearly half of those assaults carried out by the passengers. Our investigation led us to dozens of women who told us the companies they work for did little to prevent or prepare them for dangerous situations they could face. And when something bad did happen, these women, including Sydney, say the companies did not do enough to help.
I asked if I could sit in his console. He said that was fine. I bent down, was getting all my stuff back together.
And that is how she thinks the driver drugged her.
I started feeling really hot and flushed, and then I didn't recognize where we were. And he started groping me and touching me. One of the things I can remember is being in the back seat, but I don't remember how I got there.
Hey guys, it's me, Comrade Lavender here, and I'm back with another anti-capitalism true crime YouTube video. Today I'm going to be doing the deep dive video of the pure evil, the Uber/Lyft ride-sharing services file industry, capitalism, wage theft, deep dive into the true crime cases of this topic, etc. All my related YouTube videos of this topic will be linked down below in the description down below of this video, in the YouTube description, as well as on the screen right now if you'd like to check them out. So let's get started into this YouTube video. Uber and Lyft are both ride-hailing apps and companies, and both offer insensitive alternatives to taxis and long-established private transportation services. Uber, Lyft agreed to pay a combined $328 million for withholding money from drivers and committing wage theft against their own employees. Uber agreed to pay $290 million, and Lyft agreed to pay $38 million in what a New York Attorney General, Loretta James, called the largest wage theft settlement her office has ever secured. The money will be distributed to cheated drivers who will get back pay along with the mandatory paid sick leave and other benefits. From 2014 to 2017, Uber deducted sales taxes and black car fund fees from drivers' payments when those taxes and fees should have been paid by the passengers. Uber misrepresented the deductions made to drivers' pay in their terms of service, telling drivers that Uber would only deduct its commission from the driver's fare and that drivers were entitled to charge the passenger for any tolls, taxes, or fees occurred. Though no method to do this was ever provided via the Uber driver app, Lyft used a similar method to shortchange drivers from 2015 to 2017, deducting a 11.4% administrative charge from drivers' payments in New York equal to the amount of sales tax and black car fund fees that should have been paid by riders. Uber and Lyft also failed to provide drivers with paid sick leave available to employees under New York City and New York state law or years. Uber and Lyft systematically cheated their drivers out of hundreds of millions of dollars in pay and benefits while they worked long hours in challenging conditions. These drivers overwhelmingly came from immigrant communities and rely on these jobs to provide for their families. A UC Santa Cruz study found that in their hometown of San Francisco, 78% of app-based drivers are people of color and 56% of them are immigrants. When COVID-19 hit, it became transparent that gig corporations only cared about the bottom line. While workers were left scrambling in the face of a deadly COVID-19 pandemic, gig corporations like Uber petitioned to deny workers access to state unemployment benefits. That means that an entire workforce was forced to choose between risking their lives to pay the rent or sheltering in place in a home that they might lose. While gig corporations refused to protect their workers, they were quick to spend over $200 million on Prop 22, a California ballot measure written for and paid by Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and other gig corporations. These very corporations spending millions of dollars to deny the majority black, brown, and immigrant workforce access to life-saving benefits and wages were also trying to petition themselves as leaders in the fight for racial justice to trick voters to support their campaign. Lyft ran ads quoting Maya Angelou poems and Uber bought billboards stating, "If you tolerate racism, delete Uber," to capitalize on the Black Lives Matter movement. These capitalist companies only care about capitalism profits. They did this shit because it was trendy. The same exact thing when companies do the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus rainbow capitalism shit. They exploited racial justice movements in an effort to cover up the truth. These capitalist corporations rely entirely on the exploitation of workers, the majority of whom are black, immigrants, and people of color. It's crucial for people to listen to real black and brown drivers who can tell the truth. We understand more than anyone the lengths profiteers will go to build legal loopholes so that they can have full access to our bodies and our labor without any recourse for workers. All too often, these apps are feeding the false promise of stable living to immigrants and people of color. It's what driver activists like to call exploitation through innovation. Uber and Lyft are more likely to fire drivers of color, report says, after passenger complaints. Non-white drivers are suspended or deactivated more often than their white counterparts, according to new research conducted. James Jordan had worked as an Uber driver in Los Angeles for 5.5 years and by the spring of 2022. But in late March, after a flurry of customer complaints, Jordan had found out that his account had been permanently deactivated, leaving the single father of 5, for whom Uber was his only source of income, functionally jobless with no notice. I had done more than 27,000 rides, he says. In 1 week or 10 days, I got more complaints than I had within those 5.5 years. Jordan, who estimates that he earned between $8,000 and $10,000 per month as an Uber driver, appealed to the company multiple times, frantically emailing and trying to get answers and get his account reinstated, but he was told his deactivation was final. One customer alleged that Jordan had tried to hit her with his car. In response, he offered to send the company footage from his dash cam to prove the incident hadn't occurred, but they weren't interested in that, he said. To get companies to respond, you have to relentlessly call, email, and visit the hub office and pray that you're lucky, says Nicole Moore, president of RideShare Drivers United, a RideShare driver association based in California. For drivers who don't use English, there is no route forward. It's an exercise in wearing people down until they give up. Of the 810 drivers surveyed, 69% of non-white drivers said that they had faced either permanent or temporary deactivation, as opposed to only 57% of white drivers. Drivers who didn't speak English or were not entirely proficient in English were also more likely to have their accounts deactivated than those who spoke the language fluently. Uber reports 141 rapes, 998 sexual assault incidents overall in 2020, despite COVID-19 pandemic ridership decline. Uber received 3,824 reports of sexual assault and misconduct from 2019 to 2020, according to the report, the second of its kind, facing increasing scrutiny on the heels of lawsuits from riders alleging they were sexually assaulted by drivers. More than 80,000 drivers have also been removed from the app to date due to continuous criminal and motor vehicle checks, the report said. Lyft admitted it recorded 4,000 sexual assault claims in its long-awaited report during rides from 2017 to 2019, including 1,800 reports in 2019 alone. More than half of these incidents in 2019 were reported as non-consensual touching of a sexual body part, according to the report. Another 156 reports involved non-consensual sexual penetration, according to the report. It also listed 10 fatal assaults from 2017 through 2019, including 4 in 2019. Allison Turcos, a New York City resident who has sued Lyft, alleging her driver sexually assaulted her in 2017, said that the report came after years of pressure from herself and other survivors. RideShare sexual assault is a systematic problem and one Lyft actively chooses to ignore, she said on Twitter. It is exhausting holding a billion-dollar capitalism tech company accountable, but I will never back down. We deserve better, she said. In a class action lawsuit in 2018, 9 women accused Uber of attempting to silence the reports on sexual assault by forcing them to individually settle their cases through arbitration and court process, a private process that often results in confidentiality agreements. Uber was fined $59 million by a California regulator in 2020 for failing to comply with a request for data on sexual assault incidents in its vehicles. Lyft was sued by more than a dozen women in 2019 who alleged the company had failed to enact basic safety measures that would have prevented the alleged assaults from happening. The women also said the company downplayed the seriousness of the attacks when they were reported. Women who drive for Uber and Lyft are being left to fend for themselves when it comes to these situations. Tara, a victim of capitalism, a former elementary school English teacher who lives in Charleston, South Carolina, had been driving for Uber for about 2 years when she had her first distressing experience with a customer. Late one night, several years ago, she picked up a male passenger outside a bar. A few minutes into the ride, the man suddenly unzipped his pants and exposed himself to her. Sarah said that she reported the passenger to Uber. The ride-sharing company assured her, but nothing about his ability to use the app in the future. Several months later, Tara was outside the same bar in Charleston waiting for a surge in requests with some other female drivers. They were talking and she told them what happened. To her surprise, both women told her they had recently picked up the same passenger weeks after Tara said she had reported him. Tara's story is not uncommon. In interviews with over 25 female ride-sharers, drivers across the country, their experiences varied, from having passengers flirt with them, solicit them for sex, or making unwanted advances towards them. Many said they have taken to carrying pepper spray and other defensive weapons in their vehicles in defiance of the app company's policies banning such items.